YouTube. Okay, and we are live on YouTube. We are live on TikTok. And today I'm going to be talking to you about a main thing that a lot of guys get wrong, and they get the 10 things that men get wrong in dating. Now, these are, sometimes men think that, oh, it's so simple, right? And there's a lot of reasons why that this is not working, a lot of reasons why dating's not working for you. And first of all, I want to let you know it's not your fault, okay? So first of all, a lot of us has not had great leadership, okay? We've really not been shown how to date, okay? We've really not been shown this, all right? And I want you to think about this for a sec, okay? Harvard goes and studies animals in the wild, right? We've got tons of psychologists and people go into the wild and they study basically basic animal mating, right? We go and study in the wild and we understand that going in the wild, it's definitely, we're going to go study animals mating. But I want you to consider this thing, okay? I want you to consider, why don't we go study animals? Why don't we go study humans? Why isn't there a Harvard-peered study review on 101 mating strategies for men and women? Why is that not there? Why do you think that there's not mating strategies for men and women? Why is that not there in Harvard? Why is there, you have to come to some guy that went to Vegas? By the way, I should have just mentioned where I've learned a lot of this information. If I spent the last basically 8 years studying this information, now I'm a coach and I coach guys to understand the fundamentals of authentic attraction, okay? And there's a big difference between learning the pickup stuff and learning the authentic attraction. So what I focus on is STR, okay? So there's a difference between STR and LTR. STR is short-term relationship strategy. I focus on LTR, which is long-term relationship strategy, in case you want to get into a long-term relationship, you want to start a family, or you want to get married, all right? So this is what I help guys with understand. And today I'm going to talk to you specifically about the 10 things men get wrong in dating, okay? And by the end of this talk, you'll understand exactly those things that you need to improve in order to start dating more authentically. And so that you don't keep hitting your head against the wall and basically messing up all the time and getting confused and unexcited about the dating market. So I want to lead in with this idea first, okay? One of the biggest reasons, and I want you to think about this right now, why do you think men struggle with dating? Why do you think they struggle? Why in this day and age, I want you to think about this for a second. Why in 2025 is there dating coaches? All right. I want you to think back to like 1950. All right. Think about in the 1950s. Was there such thing as a dating coach? Was there someone that needed help dating? No. But why do you think that is? Why do you think back in 1950s, we didn't need to have dating coaches? Okay, so I'm about to dive a little bit deep here. I'm not going to be able to go too deep into this topic because I want to get you the 10 reasons, but I want to lay a little bit of a foundation. Society held the frame, okay? Here's what I mean. Back in the day, in the 1950s, women basically just got their vote, okay? And women couldn't get a credit card without being with a man, all right? And part of that reason was for a lot of suppression, and I don't completely agree with it, in fact. And the thing is women couldn't get bank accounts, they couldn't get credit cards without having a man. So they were incentivized to get into a relationship in order to live in this society. And so society held that frame, society held that structure together in order for men to get into a relationship, in order for women to live life, they had to date and marry a man. Now, if we think about back in the 1950s and earlier, this country, whether you agree with it or not, and I'm coming from a North American society, I live in North America, I was raised in North America, but North America, if you think about it, back in the day, was founded on Christianity, okay? That's where the people came to this country. And now I love it. What I love about being in North America is there's such a vast variety of different religions. And I'm not going to get too deep into this. Remember, I said I can't go too deep in the structure. I just want to lay a little bit of a foundation of the 1950s psychology and earlier, is that the founding forefathers used to teach Christianity in the churches, or sorry, in the school systems. They passed that on. So if you think of a traditional Christian mindset, it's a lot of traditional values, right? Monogamous relationship. Now, I'm not here to preach or teach any of that type of stuff. I actually support people in whatever viewpoint they want, what works best for them in alignment, ideally with the alignment of the higher self of the planet, and live in harmony. But under those constructs, back in the 1950s and earlier, society held the frame. Now, if you think about it, also back in the day, women's sexuality wasn't liberated yet, right? So it was frowned upon in the society for a woman to be promiscuous. This is why, and I actually researched this when I got married, was if you actually think about it, so when a man gets married, he grabs the woman and walks her through the door. The reason he's doing that is because he's essentially taking her away from her father and like her actual father. And then what's happening is she's going, no, don't take me, as if like she's going to go to bed with this man and she doesn't want to act promiscuous. So that tradition, why we grab a woman and bring her through the door, is actually a very old school, weird thing that we do. And I remember when I got married, I mentioned to my wife, I'm like, I want you to give me a ton of notes on why we do what we do, because I don't want to do anything unconsciously. I don't there's a lot of traditions that get passed down. It's like, why do we do that? Why exactly do we do that? So if we look at that, these are just brief ideas of society held frame. So back in the 1950s, that was essentially the mindset, and women needed access to a man in order for them to survive in sexually society. Plus, women weren't sexually liberated. So at that time, it was very difficult for women to essentially be free in themselves, okay? And so it was kind of frowned upon. Plus, women didn't have much reach, okay? What do I mean by that? They had to just stay within the confinements of their own town, okay? But now, if you think about it, society has gone global. Okay, so little Tom and little Susie are no longer in a small town. Even if they are in a small town, they can see the world, right? Through their phones, right? So now if you look at society, we've gone global. So society no longer holds the frame, okay? So that's the first thing I want you to think about when we think about what men get dating wrong, is that right now some men are still thinking in 1950s mindset. But you have to evolve if you want to be a man in modern day society and date in a modern day society. And I think it's actually a blessing right now. I think it's an absolute blessing what's happening. So if we fast forward from the 1950s mindset up to the 2025, you'll see a liberation of the feminine. Women got the votes. Women were able to get bank accounts. Women were able to get credit cards. And women are able now to be promiscuous. Women don't have to get married. This is fantastic. But the challenge is, because the feminine has so much liberation, I believe she's calling for the masculine to awaken. So what does that mean? That means no longer can he just be a provider male, and no longer can he just be resources. So I want you to think about this for a sec. In most societies right now, the police system is pretty good, right? The law and order is pretty good. So she can basically get a dog and she feels safe. All right. But back in the 1950s, that didn't happen. You needed a man to protect you, right? So protect and provide, right? Well, if you look at it, most of society is fairly safe to live in now. If you actually look at the statistics, obviously in some places, but majority of places, it's actually much safer than it's ever been in society. So we don't need that protection part. And then if she just gets a dog, she's got that protection. Next, provide. If you look at the statistics, majority of it's astronomical the amount of women graduating from university than it does you see men. And women's pay grade is actually starting to balance out, and women eventually are definitely going to start making more money than men. So now she doesn't need a man to provide for her. She can take care of herself. So then we ask ourselves, what does a man provide, right? If she has her own protection and she has her own money, what does he provide? Well, now it really comes down to that core masculinity, right? That authentic masculine energy is really that place that you can provide a woman, right? But in traditional ways, that doesn't work because we're in the modern world in 2025. So if you think about it, there's no such thing as dating coaches back in the day. So this is kind of what's happening right now. You see this in the marketplace, is a lot of guys are getting confused with the 1950s structure in 2025. So we have to, I call it the awakened masculine. We're looking for the awakened masculine, the masculine to evolve to raise his consciousness and to provide and understand his woman from a deeper level so that there can be harmony. Because now, because the woman has been liberated and is awakened, it's causing the polarity to happen where it's now time for the masculine to be liberated and awaken. And this is a powerful time to be alive if you can understand this from a higher level. Now, I know that this is an extremely sensitive subject, so understand that this is very complex, but I work with guys all the time and that's studying this stuff, that it's very, very powerful. And I want to share with you a story, okay? One of my clients had this mindset shift, okay? Shifting from the 1950s mindset to the 2025 mindset. And one of the things he got over was being afraid of asking for the number, okay? And being able to take social risks, right? Because he learned to start calibrating his masculine energy and conduct himself in a way that was congruent, that builds attraction. And that's really what we're talking about here, is authentic attraction. And by him applying this information, he's able to now become more attractive. And in fact, he's able to then now get numbers and ask women out on dates. So let's go over today the 10 things that men get wrong in a relationship, and well, in dating specifically, okay? So that's what we're gonna go over right now. We're gonna go over the 10 things men get wrong in dating, and we're gonna understand exactly why that is and what those 10 things are. And then from there, you will have a full understanding of why that is. Okay, great. So number one, the first reason why men get wrong, or what they get, is they performance over presence. Okay? Performance over presence, okay? And this is very important, okay? One of the key fundamentals of masculinity is your presence, okay? This is something that I see men get wrong. And one of my mentors taught me a very powerful thing. And if you plan to be a dad, or if you're a dad, I would encourage you to listen to this. And if you're a mom, listen to this as well. But if you're a dad, be where your feet are, okay? Be where your feet are. So many times you get around people, especially nowadays in 2025, and that's for good reason, right? We're in the TikTok bunch of goldfish era. But your presence is so important with a woman. If you read the book, The Way of a Superior Man, he talks about the importance of presence as a man for your woman. It's very important that you have presence for your woman, okay? And if we look at this is why if you plan to get into a long-term relationship, the pickup stuff's not really going to be a long-term play, because it's based upon performance. So this is something that I fell short on when I went to Vegas, and then I wasn't finding or attracting my ideal woman because I was basically basing my life on tactics, okay? So this is why there is some overlap, okay? When we look at STR and LTR strategy, okay? STR is short-term relationship strategy, okay? And then LTR is long-term relationship strategy. And if we look at this in the middle, there's some overlap, okay? There's overlap between the strategies, all right? So there are still similar strategies between both of them, then there is some overlap. For example, congruence is very important, all right? Congruence is very important. Polarity is very important, okay? And frame is very important when we talk about STR and LTR strategies. But the difference between STR and LTR, this is based off of performance, okay? So you're constantly performing. And this one's based off of authenticity, okay? So there's a big difference between STR and LTR strategies, because STR is where the pickup world lives, okay? So this is what's being perpetuated a lot online right now. This is what the pickup world's existing in. It's a lot of it based upon performance, right? And it's like, I don't agree with this stuff, but like, okay, you've heard this thing called looks maxing, right? Like, yes, optimize your look, but like work on your inner world, okay? Work on your inner game. to dial that in and be congruent to that, start building your frame, understanding polarity, you can isolate your personality, right? You can start workshopping your personality, letting that authentic self come out. And now you're using that LTR strategy so that when you go mate, when you go find your ideal woman, now it's not based upon performance. It's based upon who you truly are. And this is an important point about performance over or performance over presence, is that the first thing we don't want to do is we don't want to be what's called seeking approval. Okay. So this is the challenge that a lot of guys get into when they first understand this information, is they get into seeking approval, right? They're trying to get approval from the woman. They're trying to get approval from their friends. They're trying to get approval from their friend group. And by the way, that's a good strategy if you think about it. The challenge is it's an unconscious strategy that actually doesn't work. But if you think about it, we do things for a reason. There's no ineffective things that humans do for psychology reasons. You didn't have to learn any of this stuff, okay? You didn't have to learn how to seek approval. You just seeked approval, and you, for some reason, along the way in your unconscious mind, thought, okay, that's a good strategy. But in fact, it's not really a great strategy. It actually doesn't help. The reason you seek approval is because you're like, oh, when I get validation, when I get approval, I'm liked. And when I get liked, I get great things in society. Well, that's actually the reverse thing that starts to happen is in your relationship. What starts to happen, or when you're in the dating world, it actually becomes like a negative, right? It actually puts you down notches, and women go, oh my God, he's just seeking for my approval. That means that he seems like, basically what happens is she goes, I'm at a higher status than he is. I don't agree with this, like, and kills attraction. Okay. So first thing you want to consider is not seeking approval. All right. So when we seek approval, when we're looking to be appeased, when we're pandering to the woman, what starts to happen is that creates an imbalance in the polarity, and now she's not attracted to us whatsoever. So this is important, which leads to, if you're constantly seeking for approval, what you get wrong is you start to overthink what to say. Okay. So you're constantly thinking about, what should I say? What should I say? Oh my God, what should I say? What should I say to her? What should I say this? Should I say that? And then your mind goes blank. And part of that is because you can't be present with the woman. So what happens to a lot of guys is they get stuck in their head. And the reason they get stuck in their head is they have the inability to access what's called lateral thinking. This is your ability to think creatively. So what happens is a lot of guys, if you look at a lot of guys' minds, this is how the distribution of a lot of guys' minds are. Okay. So let's say this is their analytical side of their brain, and this is their so right there, that's kind of the distribution size of their brain. This is the analytical, and this is the emotional. Okay. So a lot of guys back in the 1950s mindset, you didn't need to develop your emotional mind, right? Because your sole purpose, because society held frame, was that you just protected and provided. So that means you needed to be very analytical. But the challenge is in the modern day world, because the feminine evolved and has their own, basically they can protect and provide themselves. Now she's calling for something deeper. She's calling for the masculine to become emotionally aware and have emotional intelligence and have presence with her and provide that space. So a lot of guys are highly emotionally underdeveloped, right? And so when they're emotionally underdeveloped, they don't have the ability to access creative thinking. They just have analytical, logical thinking. But if you think about it, what is a human interaction, right? Like, what is a human interaction? It's random. It's spontaneous. You can isolate probabilities and you can isolate patterns, right? When you have repeated patterns, we call it exposure. When you have repeated exposure happening over and over again, then this is great. But ultimately, in reality, it's random. All right. So the key to this is being able to isolate the randomness and not fall into the analytical conversations and access your creative mind, because you want to think about it. Women are in constant flow. Women are constantly thinking and seeking in flow. Okay. So when you have this ability to laterally think, now you're in flow, you're having that conversation where the conversation starts to flow. Okay. So then you will start not overthinking what to say. And the next thing to this, when you're trying to perform over just being present with her and just sharing your presence with her, is trying to win her over. Okay, so this is kind of a paradox, okay? You're gonna kind of see, you're trying to quantify women, all right? Women are random as well, all right? So women are from a different planet than we're from. And you're gonna see this, like trying to quantify women is an interesting thing. So you'll be like, sometimes, Matthew, didn't you just say this? But now you're contradicting that. I'm like, yeah, welcome to what a woman's like. It's not analytical, right? It's emotional, which is fantastic. That's what I love about women. So isn't this an interesting thing? You're saying, Matthew, okay, I'm supposed to pursue her and I'm trying to attract her, yet I'm not supposed to win her over, and I'm trying to win her over. And this is what you'll find. And this is why I love building this awareness. Basically, if you understand what I do for a job, is I do what's called awareness training. I just basically bring awareness. You have to understand, where is that place coming from? Okay. When you're trying to win her over, are you trying to win her over from a validating, seeking approval place? Because if you are, that's going to turn her off. So yes, you will win her over, but do that just because, okay? And this is key. Where is the place coming from, all right? So where is it coming from that you're seeking approval? So that's the first one. And the next one, the one that guys make up, is nice, but not real, okay? So you're nice, but you're not real, okay? So this is something that they talk about, is don't be hiding at your center, okay? Most guys, most people in general actually hide at their center. They hide who they are. And I am very guilty of that. For a very long time, I hid at my center, all right? So I was constantly hiding at my center and not sharing who I actually am and not sharing my authentic self with the world. So one of the things you want to consider is nice, not real, okay? So within that nice, not real, one of the things is guys are avoiding conflict, okay? One of the key fundamentals, okay? If you want to understand women, you have to understand this, okay? If you want to understand women, you have to understand this. You have to understand feelings, okay? You have to start developing emotional intelligence. If you want to understand women, you want to understand their feelings, okay? And within that, you have to understand communication, okay? So this is fundamental, and this is the journey that I've been on, and that's why I love communication. I feel like that communication is the tide that raises the most boats. And so understanding communication at a fundamental level is very imperative for a man, all right? You can't skip this one. And so when you understand communication, one of the core things you're going to understand is what's called conflict resolution, okay? How do you have opposing opinions and resolve it, okay? You see this in the world right now. We've just seen this with that Charlie guy, right? With people having opposing opinions. And how do you cordially have conversations with someone when you disagree, all right? And so what happens is guys get into the trap of being afraid of having conflict, okay? So they're afraid of conflict. And because of that, they don't have a strong frame, and that imbalances the polarity. So that's important. And then what happens is, because they're afraid of conflict, they're hiding their opinions, okay? They start to hide their opinions. They don't share who they truly are. They don't share their authentic self. They're just going with the appeasal of the tribe. They're just going, oh, you like that? I like that too. Oh, you don't like that? I don't like that as well. And changing their opinions, right? Not having a core opinion about anything, right? We call it like not having a backbone, right? Or being spineless, right? And so what happens is not having any opinions, not having any real opinions, it means you stand for nothing. And when you don't stand for anything, it means you fall for everything. And that's what happens. And because you do that, you are afraid to lead. Okay? So I don't know, where do you want to go for dinner? I don't know, where do you want to meet? I don't know, what time do you want to meet? I don't know, when are you free? It's like you have no strength of frame to yourself. You're just constantly appeasing the other woman, right? And you're just constantly pandering to her, and that just, makes her completely unattractive. So what you want to do is, she wants a woman that can lead, okay? This is what a woman wants. She's coming to you for leadership, all right? Now, the first person you have to learn how to lead is yourself, Okay. So this is something fundamental that unfortunately right now we're in what's called a leadership epidemic, where we're lacking a lot of leadership, and for good reason, right? When we're broadcasting ourselves out into the world, where basically the world is right now is changing so quickly, but we're basically lacking a leadership epidemic. And one of the core fundamentals for attraction is your ability to lead. This is important. You got to think about it. She's trying to see whether or not you're going to be able to lead her, and she's whether or not you're going to be able to lead her children, right? If she's receiving your children, she's got to make sure that you can lead yourself, you can lead your family, and you can lead her, right? And that's what she's looking for. She's screening. This is called screening for compatibility. So one of the things that she's doing is she's screening for compatibility. So can you lead? Where is your leadership at? Do you have the ability to lead? And if you don't, that's okay. But this is where you got to start. All right. So who do you lead? The first person you lead is yourself. But then the second person you lead others. And this is what she's looking for. So the third thing is most guys have not done much inner work. Okay. They've not done much inner work. And the challenge with that is that they've not done the work inside themselves. And because they've not done the work inside of themselves, they have the inability to be present with their woman. They have the inability to be present with the people they're around, and they definitely have the inability to lead. And so the challenge with this is what happens, and the mistake they make is they're skipping the inner reflection. Okay. And this is what I do with coaching, right? When I coach guys, one of the things I do is when you're coming and working with me, one of the things we would do together is we're going to start doing some reflection. So I have something called a progress tracker, right? Where we quantify your social results, and we're starting to identify and quantify your exact results that you're getting. And this is very important because you want to be able to self-reflect. Okay, what worked? What didn't work? Okay, what's an opportunity for an upgrade? What area of my life am I going to upgrade? Where are the upgrades that I need to make? And you have to do this through self-inquiry and self-reflection, right? And I forget who quote comes from, but the unexamined life is not worth living. And I think that's Marcus Aurelius, I believe it is. And so what we want to do is we want to be able to reflect. We want to be able to self-audit ourselves so that we can improve our communication, that we can improve our social results. So this is very important. You can do this through meditation. You can do this through being in the woods, going on your own. You must spend some time on your own, okay? In self-reflection, journaling. What I did was sensory deprivation tanks, going in a float tank center, some self-auditing. Hey, what worked? Why did that person react that way? Oh, when I said that thing, how did that come off? Oh, that didn't feel like that really came off that well, right? So this is something you want to consider, all right? And the next one, this is important, okay? Weak self-belief, all right? Something I want you to consider now. 10x your confidence right now, okay? You got to 10x your confidence. And you're going to say, well, Matthew, that's easy for you to say. No, it's not. No, it's not. Many times in my life where I have not been confident. But you know what I've come to realize? People like confidence, okay? Now, there's a balance with this. I'm not talking about confidence from a narcissistic, egoic place. No, I'm talking about self-belief that, hey, I've got this. I can do this. Why not me? Why not me? Why not me? Why can't it be me? I'm enough. 10 out of 10. I've got this. And you got to start talking to yourself. I've got this. I'm a winner. I got this. I got this. I'm a winner. Why not? Why can't it be me? I don't see why it can't be me. Why not me? This is me. It's me. I've got this. I can do this. I am the man. I'm the winner. I've got this. I've got this. I've got this, right? You need to self-generate that self-belief. Now, this is where we come back to the inner reflection, right? So I'm not talking about some inflated confidence out of nowhere. No, then you got to start building your skill sets. But I want to ask you right now, where in your life are you hiding? What area of your life are you hiding? I'll raise my hand. I'll tell you what, for the last 8 years, other than this year, I was hiding from my family, okay? I was hiding from my family. I was hiding from my past. I was running. I was an escape artist. I called myself Harry Houdini, all right? Harry Houdini, I was an escape artist, okay? And one of the things is I want to ask you right now, where are you hiding? Because I know where I was hiding. And I think about how long I was hiding for. And I think about how easy it would have been just to stop hiding. and the results and how much further along and how much quicker and how much healing and how far ahead. Now, there's a season and timing for everything in your life, okay? I'm not here to like completely push you, all right? Because I think that if you want to heal it, right? If you want to heal it, you have to feel it, okay? And I believe this is, in my opinion, I believe that this is why there's so much addiction around. And because a lot of it comes down from a lot of unprocessed trauma. And so at the time, I wasn't able to process my trauma. So you need to be able to have time and space for that. I do a lot of that with my clients as well, all right? So if you want to heal it, you have to feel it, all right? So that weak self-belief is basically obviously coming from some childhood stuff, and we got to increase that, all right? So that's one of the big things we want to work on, is just 10xing your confidence in yourself, all right? Why not you? Why not step on stage? You know how many times I take social risks, right? I want to ask you right now, right? Like, say, example, you're going and talking to a woman, right? Why not ask her for her number? Or why not go talk to her? You know, you're so afraid of, and we're going to get into that, you're afraid of getting rejected, but how else are you going to improve, right? Going up and talking to her, having that conversation, asking for that number, right? 10x your confidence right now. That's something, you know what's cool about this? 10x in your confidence takes nothing, all right? You just being like, you know what? I'm not playing small anymore. I'm going to play big. I'm going to go after the life that I deserve. I know that I deserve, and I'm going to start going after it. And that means I'm going to take some social risk. That means I'm not always going to have it figured out. And sometimes I'm going to land, and a lot of times I won't, but I'm going to keep moving forward. And then when I really fall over, I'm going to take some time to self-assess. I'm going to build up skill sets while I'm building up my confidence. And then eventually you start to expand that confidence. And now that confidence starts to accentuate in the world, okay? And then the world starts reflecting that back to you and becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this is something we want to do. And linking to that point is not seeking it from external validation. Okay, so one of the things we want to do is be self-validating. All right, we want to self-validate. We don't want to be basically taking validation from a supply of other people. All right, you want to self-validate. You want to have, you don't want to rely on external validation. And so what I see so often is so many people are looking for external validation from others. No, draw it from within. Have that self-validating concept inside yourself. I want to teach you a hack, okay? I want to teach you the quickest way to get approval, okay? What do you think the quickest way to get approval? All right, what do you think the quickest way to get approval is? If you're to guess right now, what do you think the quickest way to get approval is? It's actually quite simple. Not want it. The quickest way to not want to, the quickest way to get approval is not wanting approval. You'll get it instantly. And the irony is, the moment you get it, you don't really even care, okay? It's the same thing about being rich, right? When you're poor, you really want to be rich. And then you start to get rich, and you're like, you know what? It's not even that big of a deal. And you just become more and more rich, right? So the same thing with this, with approval. The irony is, the quickest way to get approval is not want it. So there's a mechanism in our brain that you're going to have to let go of and transcend. And this is where the conscious awareness works, right? This is where you become consciously aware, and you start using your consciousness, your neocortex, your ability to be aware of self and observe self. Now you start expanding, you bring awareness above yourself and not just living in the sleep derp state. And now you no longer need approval. And then the irony is, you get approval instantly. And you know what's funny? We can always tell, all right, in this day and age, all right, more than ever, our spidey senses for approval is the highest it's ever been. We have a sniffer. Our sniffers have gotten very good for inauthenticity, all right? When people are being inauthentic online now or in public, we can tell. And our sniffers are getting really good. So the main thing you want to do is it's called a self-generated state. You don't want to rely on external sources in order to get validation, okay? So this is partly why I do this as well. One of the side notes, one of the benefits of me doing live is I want people to kind of actually come mess with me. I want them to say, you know, it's funny. Most people are like trying to hide from trolls. I'm like, I kind of want the trolls. I'm not manifesting the trolls, but I need people to test my frame. I need to see how strong I can deliver my content where people are coming in and testing my frame. And that can become very powerful because you're going to need this as a man, because women are going to test your frame. All right. They're going to come in and test your frame, and they're going to do this throughout your life. Okay. So once you get into a relationship, a lot of what I'm teaching here, you're going to have to bring into your relationship as well. All right. So the next thing we want to consider that men get wrong in the dating scene is that they're chasing and not choosing. Okay. They chasing, not choosing. Now, again, you're going to say, Matthew, well, that's easy for you to say if you've got options. If I don't have options, how can I not choose, or how can I not chase? Yes, there's nuances to all of this. All right. There's not, okay. The way that I teach this stuff is that there's a science and an art, okay? And you want to combine the science and the art. It's similar like the analytical mind and the emotional mind. You want to combine them together. So a lot of times the way I break this down to guys is I break it down through the analytical mind, but then we need to transfer it to the emotional mind, okay? So it's in the energy, okay? So yes, you will be chasing, okay? There is a chase to this, but it's the energy that I chose you, all right? Because women want to feel selected. That's very important. So the challenge what guys get into is they get into the over pursuing trap, okay? So they're over infatuated with one specific woman, okay? They're like, oh my God, she's the one. I can't get her out of my mind. And as if there's no other women on this planet. Now, if you're super infatuated with the one and she's the one, that's fantastic. But don't lose your frame. Okay, this is key. If you're over infatuated with her and you start to lose your frame, okay, I'll teach you this in a sales trick. I remember one of my sales coaches taught me this. I started getting on a sales call with someone, and the call was going great, and and then all of a sudden, I aborted my script, and I started winning chat, and I lost the sale. And my sales mentor taught me at the time. He said, "Don't abort your script. There's a process there for a reason." This is the same thing with women. All right, this is where that overlap is from STR and LTR. Don't leave your frame. All right, you still need your frame. And so what that means is you can still pursue her, but maintain your frame. Don't lose your frame. So that means what happens is if you're, we call it, it's actually called this. It's the buyer seller dynamic. Okay. Okay, so we call it the buyer-seller dynamic. You want to be the buyer, or you want her to buy you, and you want to be the seller, right? And the way you do that is through your frame, okay? And the value you bring to the room, the value you bring to the experience, okay? Because the value you bring, ultimately, the main value that you bring to her is how you make her feel. So that's why you want to have a strong frame. So don't over pursue. And when you're over pursuing, what happens is you're constantly seeking for her approval, okay? And again, this is just not going to end well, all right? When you're constantly seeking for her approval, it's just never going to end well. She's not going to be attracted to you, and you're just looking constantly for her validation, all right? And when we're chasing and not proving, the challenge we make is we don't have no clear boundaries or clear standards. So the challenge is she can sense off her. Okay, I'm about to get some deep stuff right now. The women have almost like a dolphin-like sonar, where they're so sensitive to all the micro nuances. She can feel you at such a deep level. It's almost like a sonar. Like, you know how dolphins have a sonar? She has this ability to have this sonar-like ability to sense you. And one of the challenges is that when you don't have any standards and you're just like, oh, I'll just take what I can get, she can feel that off you. She can feel, because remember, coming back to that buyer-seller dynamic, she can sense that, you're in scarcity. And this is where the mindset stuff kind of gets in, right? You kind of have to trick your mind. There's some stuff you got to trick your mind in thinking. Like, again, the same thing with, the same thing you need to do when you're like 10xing your confidence. Sometimes you got to hack your mind, which is really important. And Myro said, Matthew, how do I get over someone who left me? It hurt so bad. Yeah, this is the challenge, right? Like when you get into a relationship and then, okay, so something that I've learned early on is like the heart's actually meant to break. And I know that seems kind of like challenging, but the heart's actually meant to break. The reason the heart's meant to break is so it can grow stronger. So the challenge is when you're getting stuck, Myro, right now in the infatuation with one woman, the challenge is you need to get back out into the marketplace. You need to start having conversations. And okay, it's kind of like approval. The quickest way you want your woman back is not want her back. So the quickest way that you can do that is improve your life. Start to go out more, get more social life, be in a healthy relationship. Because this is what starts to happen. Like if you get into an actual relationship, then your woman will actually want you back potentially. And now you don't even care. So we have to get, there's this state that we want to get to with women as a man. And it's actually a spiritual state. Ideally, we want to get to what's called equilibrium, equanimous. One of the things is we want to be equanimous, all right? So the challenge is if we get overinvested in one woman, she's going to feel that, and it's actually going to create what's called needy energy, and that energy is actually going to be quite unattractive. So we want to get to that equilibrium point, and the way you can do that is now doing that self-inner work, reflect. Where in my relationship, Myro, what I want you to do is reflect in your relationship. Myro says, I don't see how I'm ever going to love someone else again. Yeah, Myro, I totally get it because that makes sense right now. It feels probably pretty overwhelming. One of the things I want you to consider, when you go through a breakup, it's actually like a chemical. It actually chemically feels like you lost a limb. Because what starts to happen in a relationship is we start to merge identities together. And now it feels like we actually lost a limb. And they've done brain studies. When you're getting over a breakup, when you've been in love, they've done brain studies. It's the same. It's similar like trying to get off of heroin. So right now, Myro, unfortunately, it's like you trying to get off heroin. So no wonder it's like you want that drug back. And that's why Myro says, Matthew, yeah, I feel like I lost my identity and I feel so empty. Yeah, so Myro, brother, this is going to be the journey. You're in the right place. You're around the right kind of guys. I want you to get around some healthy mindset right now. And now time's the time to get back on your bike. You know, you fell off your bike. Now's the time to get back on your bike and start to move forward. Okay, so you got to pick up your socks. Give yourself a bit of breathing time. So one of the things that I would suggest if you've just gone through a gnarly breakup is first thing, give yourself about a couple weeks to a month to go through all those feelings. I want you to write down exactly how long you're going to give yourself. This is something that Brian Tracy talks about, is give yourself a time period, a set time period, being like, okay, I'll give myself this amount of time. Then from there, once that time happens, it's kind of like the comeback story, where the guy's lost the movie. He goes up at 5 a.m. in the morning, puts his hood on, he drinks eggs, gets to the gym, starts pushing, and starts getting his life back on track. That's the main focus we got to do now is you got to get around healthy mindsets. You got to get around some brothers that are on this path, and you got to pick yourself back up and move forward. Because one of the things is if we get lost in what's called the lost in the sauce, it's going to be really difficult. And the main thing you got to understand is that right now it's going to feel like you're getting through a heroin addiction. And that's what's actually happening chemically. So it's not easy. So think about this, right? Like getting over a chemical addiction, like that's not easy. So that's what you're going through right now. So if you know that about yourself, you know that basically you lost your identity and that your brain's going through a chemical reaction. Well, now how can you best support yourself? Well, now you want to look at like, what do addicts do to get over addictions, right? Like I remember I've had addictions through alcohol. I've had addictions through cocaine. I've had addictions through marijuana. I've had addictions through funny stuff online. I don't want to say the word. And I've had addictions to having a lot of fun with women as well. And all of these, and then food as well, right? And these are difficult things to overcome. And this is where we have to regain our will and cultivate our willpower back in order to get our life back on track. So a couple of things you can do: surround yourself by great people, good mindsets. YouTube's free, so there's a lot of good mindsets on YouTube. Get around a lot. That's what I did. A lot of my times I was surrounded by not very good mindsets, so I just started watching people online that had a strong mindset. Like you get access to whoever you want on the internet. You have to be disciplined with who you listen to online, right? It's important. So start unfollowing all the toxic people that aren't supporting you and start getting around some strong mindsets. Next, try to find a community, try to find a group of people that are similar to you, that are heading towards the direction that you're heading towards, that also can empathize with you. They can be like, that's very difficult, Myro, I feel bad, like I can hear your pain and what you're going through, and that sounds difficult. In this time in life, I had this situation, and now you start relating with other people, and you're like, oh, I'm not alone. And then they start to give you advice or things that they've tried in their life that work for them. And now you're surrounded by a group of people that you're not now on your own. And then next thing you do is you start taking next little steps. So you're like, you know what? Today's the day. Maybe you put on some motivation on YouTube. You walk to the gym. You go to the gym. You start lifting. You get that healthy pump on. You start getting yourself back in the gym. You start to rebuild yourself back out. Now you get back online and you get back out there and now you're moving. All right. So good job. And let's move to the next one. So the fifth thing that guys mess up with is the weak, and this leads actually what we were talking about, weak physical presence. Okay. So they have a weak physical presence. And the challenge with that is that they don't take up any space. Okay. You're welcome. Myra says, Matthew, thank you for the advice. Awesome, brother. Let's get it. Keep in contact with me. Message me and let me know how it goes. All right. So weak physical presence. The challenge is men are too afraid to take up space in their body. All right. And you have to kind of own the space that you're in. Now, I don't know if you know this right now, but I don't know how big I look on camera, but I will tell you, I'm not a big guy. You know, I'm like 5'8", 5'9", all right? And you have to own the space that you're in, okay? And this is where I need you to 10x your confidence, all right? So what happens is too many guys have nervous body language, okay? And some of us have this for a good reason, okay? So if you're someone like me, I was bullied as a kid, and so I was constantly twitchy, right? Like I was always afraid of people around me hitting me and these types of things. And I can remember for a very long time, it took me quite a while to not be so jumpy around people. You know, so you can imagine, what do you think my body language was around people, right? Around women and stuff. And if I'm constantly twitching and like, you know, scared to get hit and these types of things, how is the woman going to feel around me? So I had to learn over time, you know what? I'm going to take up the space that I'm in. I'm going to own the space that I'm in, and I'm going to just own that. So one of the things that I say with guys, a lot of times, all right, depending what's congruent to you, all right, but a lot of times what we want is essentially a lot of still body language, okay? We want to be still and stable. And this is why you need that physicality aspect to yourself. Ideally, it's not necessary because you need to own the frame that you're in. That's the ideal scene, right? If you're not born as like some 6'2" jacked big dude, then you got to own the frame that you're in. You got to own the skin that you're in, which is very important. So not having so much twitchy, nervous body language is very important. Being centered in yourself, being centered in your energy, and having the core strength and the core solid, right? Not hiding at your solid, at your center. And this is why we want that core physicality. And that's why lifting allows you to feel that centeredness. And the next one is a poor voice, right? Poor tone or slash voice. Okay. So I don't know if you can hear, but my voice isn't very deep, right? It's not necessarily that you have to be deep. All right. It's, are you when you speak? All right. I want you to think about this right now. I've been speaking for about 47 minutes. All right. Can you hear a strain in my voice? No, you can't. You know why? Because I'm using my release muscles. I'm not afraid to use my voice. I'm allowing my voice through my release muscles to come out. Okay. But it doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a low toned voice. This is ideal. If you can speak from here and have this kind of conversation, then this is ideal. But if you can't speak like that, and that's not your natural rhythm, you want to have different inflection points. And when you speak, hey, how's it going? Like when you speak, you want to have a downward tone at the end of what you're saying, right? And you want to have that staccato, and that shotgun, to be able to shotgun, right? To speak. And you want to be able to have that power. So most guys, when they speak to women, they swallow their voice and their neck is in a lot of strain, and they're using their control muscles, which is not allowing the voice to boom and allow that projection to come out. Because one of the key things we want in attraction is that ability to project our voice and allow ourselves to be seen and heard. So right now, some of you might be locked in your childhood, right? There's a part of you, and I remember when I first started my public speaking journey, there's a part of myself that was locked, right? My voice was locked. So we want to allow that relaxing voice. And one of the things we can do is start doing vocal exercises and these types of things. Now, the other thing that guys mess up on is grooming. Okay. This one is something simple. Okay. This is something all guys can do, is they can work on their grooming. All right. This is something that I really encourage you to work on. so many women, and this is something I actually struggled with. I lived in third world countries, so I was constantly in the surf. And when I came back to third world or first world countries, I never put on deodorant and this type of stuff. And it's one of the quickest ways to build unattraction, right? If she can smell you from across the room and it doesn't really smell good, just take a shower, right? That's a simple thing. Take a shower, take care of yourself, right? But we don't have to be over fanatical about this. Just take a shower, put on some deodorant, right? It can be simple. The next thing that the guys make a mistake is one of the things is called liked but not trusted. Okay, so she might like you, right? You've heard this before. Oh, you're such a good guy, but I just don't see you like that. Part of the reason is she doesn't trust you, and part of that reason is she doesn't trust you to lead her. She needs you to lead her future children, right? If you think about it, from a biological level, women are checking on, can you lead me? From a biological level, can you lead me? Right? And can you lead my future children? Because my biology is counting on it. So can you lead me? And this is really important. So the thing is what happens with this is men have inconsistent behavior, okay? And this is where this is connected to congruence, all right? One of the core fundamentals you need to have is this ability to be congruent to who you say you are, all right? So are you who you say you are? The challenge with nice guys is that, unfortunately, they're great human beings. They're such great human beings, but the challenge is they're hiding at their center and they're not being congruent, right? And they're not showing their intent. They're not trying to polarize, right? And when we're polarizing, what that means is we're being authentically ourselves. And whether she resonates with us or she doesn't, she's either really for us or really against us. And this is something that we need to have that ability, is to be congruent. So this is something that I go over in Authentic Attraction. This is a course I've created where I've identified the journey for a guy to go from awkward to basically awesome in relationships. And so we want to have that consistent behavior, because when you have that consistency, she can trust you. All right. And the challenge is, the other thing is, most guys that fall into this trap have no follow through. All right. So they can't follow through. Say they like a person or they want to get on a date with someone. They like them, but they have no ability to go talk to her and ask her to come out on a date. So they're avoiding this and they have no follow through. And they also avoid tension. All right. So this is where it comes down to polarity. All right. You're wanting polarity. Polarity is what creates that sexual tension. And that sexual tension is what creates that attraction. And that attraction is what creates intimacy. And that intimacy is what creates connection. Not all the time. It's not a specific math equation like that, but they're all coexisting with each other. And that tension, that's ability. And that's why you want to work on your ability to, like, the conflict resolution, right? The ability to be with tension. It's okay that she's tense, right? Because you got to understand, women need men. They don't have to, but in a healthy polarity where there's the healthy masculine and the healthy feminine, the man's role is, if you think about it, women are in constant flow, okay? So women are in constant flow, all right? They're in constant flow. And when they get stressed out, they get into more flow, okay? When they get stressed out. So what they need is, they need what's called a ground wire. And so the man is that ground wire, okay? And so what happens is, when women are in that frenetic energy, that stressful energy, what she needs to do is she needs to feel the grounded energy. So it's the man's role, it's the masculine role. And by the way, this can happen in different dynamics, right? Whether it's a masculine, like a woman's being masculine and the man's being feminine, this can work, or this can work in same sex. What I help with is men and women. That's the area I know. And so when we're talking about a man in his masculine, if we're talking about a woman in her feminine, she needs to land sometimes on the man. So sometimes in your relationship with your woman, you're just going to need to grab her and hug her when she's feeling stressed out. You say, here, do you want a hug? And she doesn't need any solutions. All right. She doesn't need Mr. Fix-It coming around. Oh, I'm so stressed. All these solutions. No, she just needs to feel your presence. She just needs to come and get a hug from you. All right. She needs to be in your arms. So this is important. to have that ability to be with tension, all right? And too many guys have that inability to be in that tension, and they try to avoid the tension at all costs. But what you got to understand is that emotions, whether it's feelings or non-feelings, are good for a woman, all right? This is important, all right? And this leads to number 7, which is hiding intentions, okay? This is where you get stuck in the friend zone, all right? Right now, because you have the inability to show your intention, this is why you're getting stuck in the friend zone, all right? Because you have to show her that you're not just her friend, all right? This is important. You're not just trying to be her friend. You're not just trying to watch Sex and the City with her on a Friday night. No, you're trying to be more than her friend, all right? You're trying to be her man. You're trying to be pursuing her. So just being so passive, right, in your pursuit of her, because you're afraid of that tension. You're like, oh, I don't want to offend her. I don't want to go in this. And now you're constantly walking around eggshells and you're pandering to her, all of her emotions, because you are completely emotionally constipated. That's not your fault, but you're emotionally constipated and you have the inability to handle emotional range, most likely due to childhood trauma, because you either grew up with an unstable family, unstable mother, or you had an absent father, which is like me. And now any sort of disrupt in the emotional regulation, because you have the inability to emotionally regulate yourself, now any sort of tension, you just go, nope, I don't want that. And you become totally passive. But that passivity is really just not really attractive. So what we have to do is also not mask our interest, right? Now you have to pursue, all right? This is where, now, Matthew, didn't you say earlier to not pursue? Yes, remember, we're talking about women here. It's not a science, okay? There's multiple things that we have to understand here, and women are complex, all right? So it's not a logical journey, all right? Women are not logical. They're feeling-based, which is fantastic. That's why we got to understand them. But don't mask your interest. It's okay if you're attracted to her. You don't need to hide that. Now, this is where we go in with intent, detach from outcome. Okay, this is a mindset that I want you to start adopting. Go in with intent, detached from outcome. Okay, this is an important mindset. When you're in the process of pursuing women, you need to go in with intent, detached from outcome, okay? This is very important. This is like one of the key frames, that you're gonna go in with is we're gonna go in with intent, detached from outcome, all right? So don't mask that you're interested in her. And this is a big one, fear of rejection, okay? We have a fear of rejection. So this is challenging because what happens with guys is they go, well, I'm too afraid to get rejected, because you've told yourself a story and you want a chemical, basically you've become addicted to the approval chemical and you want the approval. And if you don't get that approval from someone, what happens is it essentially means death to your ego and death to your mind, because you have that chemical reaction. And what we have to do is we have to train that part of your brain to basically cipher through. Rejection doesn't mean that you're not a bad person. Rejection just might mean it just might not be a fit, which is totally okay, right? If out of how many people you meet that you actually get along with, that you resonate with, it's okay if they're not a fit. It's not a big deal. So that's an important thing to understand. Next is what happens is, like, mistakes guys make is lack of polarity. Okay, and this is important and essential. In any relationship, you have to have polarity. There has to be an attraction of poles. Think about it. We live in a world right now. I think this is so funny. We live in a world where, like, denying the natural laws, right? We live in a world that has a North Pole and a South Pole. We live in a world that has an East Pole and a West Pole. And then there's things in the middle, right? But there's these end poles. And the reason for that is we live in a world of duality, right? And these opposite poles are what allow us to exist in this reality. And if you look at it, there's also masculine and feminine roles as well, all right? So here's one of the things that happens to guys is to get into this over-explaining themselves, okay? So you start over-explaining yourself. You start justifying yourself. You start constantly explaining, well, it's because I'm doing this. Well, it's because of this. Da, 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 da. You feel that? It's like this ungrounded masculine energy, right? So one of the things is we want to be mindful not to constantly get into this over-explaining mode. And then the other thing too with the lack of polarity, indecisiveness. Okay, so you're constantly can't make a decision. Remember we talked about that earlier. Oh, where do you want to go for a date? Oh, should we go here? It's like, no, we're Thursday night, taco bar. Does that work? Right? You're just making the decision Thursday night. Does this work for you? Right? Which is still an invitation, but you're making a decision. And women want that decisiveness. All right. So having that ability. So a quick exercise that you can do to start working on your masculinity. So let's say you're with a group of friends and everyone's around and they're saying, okay, well, what do you want to eat for dinner? Where should we go eat? You just say, oh, there's this cool Chinese restaurant. We should go check it out. Instead of just being like, oh, where do you guys want to go? Start suggesting things. Start making decisions and working on this. And what that will do is, will add is not grounded. Okay, it's going to help you work on your groundedness. It's going to help you work on your decision making. But the challenge is most guys are not grounded inside themselves, and they're missing this aspect. And number 9 is they're missing signals. Okay, they're missing signals. And the challenge with this is that they're having the inability to read her body language. All right, they can't read her body language. And the reason they can't read their body language is because they're stuck in their head. All right. Most guys are stuck in their head. And so when they're interacting from that analytical part of their brain and lack complete emotional intelligence. So they're so focused on the interaction that they can't interact freely. All right. So they're missing it and they're completely ignoring all of her signals. She's feeling completely uncomfortable and lacks the inability to have that ability to fully read her body language. And this is important because we need to be able to understand and pick up her cues, right? And read her cues. And again, I go over this in Authentic Attraction Club on all the cues that you want to start learning in order to attract her. Now, the next thing is understanding her interests. Okay. The other thing that happens is you misunderstand her interests, her cues of interest, right? And you're not reading because you're so stuck in your head. You're not reading her cues correctly. And now you're not socializing with fluidity, right? It's awkward. It's clunky. You're having a clunky interaction with her. So what we want to do is invite in fluidity. And one of the things is when she pulls away, what the mistake guys make is when she pulls away, what's happening is he's chasing her when she pulls. So the thing is we don't want to chase when she pulls. Okay. So women will do this at times is women will pull, right? They'll pull away. They want to test to see how invested you are in her. So when she pulls away, how do you keep your cool, right? Do you move from your center or do you stay centered inside yourself? And women will test this. All right. They want to see where you are because women don't want to be, I know this is a complex one, but women actually don't want to be the pedestal. They don't actually want it. They want to be treated like a princess, but they don't want to actually be your princess. So this is why you'll understand from a fundamental level, if you read the book, Way of Superior Man, it is your mission as a man to find your purpose and stay on that purpose. And then she comes into that and fits into that purpose and you build a life together. But whether she's coming or not, you're heading towards your purpose. And when you have that decisiveness and when you have that clarity, that becomes really attractive. So this is something we're going to have to cultivate over time. All right. I didn't have this. All right. When I first got started on all this, I didn't have this. And Queen Nasara says, you guys are really so insecure. Yes, it's so true, Queen. Actually, a lot of guys are extremely insecure. And honestly, that comes from lack of leadership, right? Something that I strongly believe is leadership rolls downhill, right? So what happens is a lot of guys haven't had great fathers, right? There's not been many great men in the world. And so because there's not been great men in the world, there's not been great leadership. And now because men don't have that leadership, they have no idea. Now, one of the key things that boys need models. All right. Boys need models. And so unfortunately, most boys are raised in either a fatherless family or they've not really had a good model. And so the challenge with that is now they have no idea how to be a man in the world and how to be a great man in the world. And the challenge with that is then now women are a byproduct of that system. So yeah, it's a really good point that you made, Queen. Yeah, and it's very difficult. And so when you look at early development, one of the key things you want to study when you're looking at all this is like childhood development. Like, and scientists have now proven this, that for the best healthy development for a child is to have a father in a masculine role and a mother in a feminine role. All right, that's where you're going to get the most productivity. You're going to have the highest chance of highest IQ for your child. And they studied this. Okay, so there's actually science backed behind this, that for development, having healthy masculine and feminine roles is so great for the child. So the difference you have to understand between raising a girl and raising a boy is that for a girl, she develops social acuity naturally. All right, she understands social science at a very young age. Okay, I'm about to drop a bomb on you right now. At the age of 4, I want you to think about this for a sec. Go back. So many people, if you want to know people, study the unconscious mind. Too many of us are trying to study the conscious mind, but you got to understand the unconscious mind. This is what Sigmund Freud talked about. And we want to study ourselves from a biological level, all right? Think of us as Homo sapiens, right? Go back to the animalistic style version of ourselves. And when you look at that, if we go back into a tribe of like 150 people, let's say the caveman, cavewoman tribe, who is the weakest one in the tribe? Well, either the elderly, but the elderly have a lot of the wisdom, right? So they're respected. The weakest person in the tribe is a young little girl. She doesn't have much strength. So she needed to develop a thing to not get, taken advantage of. And so at 4 years old, through evolutionary psychology, what happened is she developed an ability of social science. So she developed a strong awareness to basically help from not getting beat up from the strong chief guys, right? So from 4 years old, little girls develop an ability, and this is why you'll see out in the world, and I love watching this, little girls got daddies wrapped around their finger because they understand social acuity at such a young age that they do that through a survival mechanism. Now, what happens is for little boys, they're out to lunch. They have to learn this stuff. And the way that they learn this stuff is through models. But if you look at this, what happens is young boys are raised by women in the school system. So now you're having no models of masculinity in a healthy way for a lot of these boys. And now these boys are completely underdeveloped and have no ability to understand emotional regulation, understand how you have effective communication. They have no ability on how to interact with women. And now this is where a product of a broken system, right? And I'm a product of that because I was raised in a fatherless family. And that's why I spent so much time studying this stuff, because I had no model of a man, right? And my model of a man was not the greatest. So, so I basically had an absent father. So I had to understand what it's like to be a man. And now I teach men to do the same, right? So this is a very important subject. And the final thing that men mess up is the fear of rejection. Okay? So they have the fear of rejection, all right? So the challenge with this is that when they have this is they take no personally. So they take no personally. All right? So the challenge with men is they get overinvested in a woman, and then it puts a lot of pressure on a woman. And then when a woman says, I don't think we're a fit, they get start to pander towards the woman. They get super needy and all these types of things. And then it stops them from pursuing women. But the challenge is when a woman says no, it might just be not no right now. It might be no for the next little bit, or it might mean no forever. But either or, that's okay. But the challenge is that's why you need to have that self-worth. You need to have that self-identity, that stability within inside yourself in order for you to really move forward, all right? So the thing is when she's rejecting you, it doesn't mean she's rejecting you and saying you're a bad person or you suck or all these types of things. No, what she's really saying is that we're just not a fit. And she might be saying there's aspects of yourself that need to change. And the key thing that I always try to do is be open for feedback. Allow feedback to come in. Now, for some of you, that might be a lot to receive right now, to receive feedback from someone. But what you want to understand is you want to understand this key mindset. We want to become better, not bitter. Better, not bitter. We want to become better, not bitter. And feedback allows us to upgrade. And those upgrades are what's going to allow us to become an attractive man. So we want to not take no personally. And the other thing that happens is guys avoid risks. Okay. In life, you're going to have to take social risks. You're going to have to take risks as a man. All right. If you look at some of the greatest humans that have done anything on this planet, it came from taking risks. All right. So that means you're going to have to get outside your comfort zone. That means, yes, it's uncomfortable. If you think about it, it's uncomfortable for a reason. All right. But that reason doesn't necessarily hold logic. Like, why are you afraid to go talk to that person? Like, there's actually a lot of reasons why. Part of that is that your brain's trying to stop you from raising status because it doesn't want to die. Because if you raise status, that means you're in competition with the other tribe members, and that means you're going to have to fight. But you're not in caveman brain anymore. You're living in caveman brain, but you're not actually in caveman brain. All right. So you got to identify and get out of that caveman think, and you have to supersede that. And that's why you have to raise your awareness. All right. You got to start raising that awareness. All right. So it's important. Next, losing identity. All right. Because you think you're losing your identity. Okay, so this is important to understand that you will not lose your identity if she rejects you. Okay, it doesn't mean it's a sense of self. She's not rejecting your sense of self. All right, so this is very important. So just to recap, the 10 things that guys mess up, all right, and get wrong is they do performance over presence. All right, be present. You need to be present. Next, nice, not real. They're trying to be too nice and they're hiding at their center. Next, they're doing no inner work. All right. They've done no inner work. Number 4, they're chasing rather than choosing. They're not choosing the woman. They have weak physical presence. They're not strong in their body. They don't have presence. Number 6, they're liked, but they're not trusted. That means she doesn't want to be mate with you. Number 7, they're hiding their intentions. They're not showing that they're not showing cues of interest. Number 8, they lack polarity. They have the inability to create polarity. Number 9, they're missing the signals. They're not reading her because they're stuck in their head. And number 10, they have a fear of rejection. Okay. So the key point that I'm going to land here and end this here is that this is not about being someone that you're not. Okay. I'm not trying to teach you to be something you're not. All right. The main thing is to be authentically yourself, but it's about removing what's not you. And that's what we want to do. We want to get to your core authentic self and have that ability to show up as you are, who you are, and attract from that authentic place. And then when you attract from that authentic place, that's where true attraction really comes from. All right. So comment below which was the biggest takeaway that you got from these 10 lessons. Which was your biggest takeaway? And let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you on the next one.